Today I'm sharing about two of the biggest mental battles I've been facing in this past month while I've been participating in my very first art residency. Welcome back to Passionfroot, where we pursue lives of purpose together. It's my turn to have a video on this channel, and like I said in the intro, I'm going to be sharing about the artist residency I've been attending this past month, which is currently the month of March, but this is going to be in the future, so who knows what month this video is actually getting posted in. I want to say that I do have a whole script down here. I planned out what I wanted to say because it takes me so long and so much beating around the bush whenever I just fly off the cuff, fly by the cuff, fly on the cuff. I'm not sure exactly what that saying specifically is. You get what I'm saying. So if you see me looking down from time to time, that's because I don't want to be sitting here filming for hours. I wanted to start this video by explaining what an art residency is because it's definitely more of a niche topic. It looks different across the board, but essentially it's a place that hosts artists for a certain period of time, allowing them to use the space, to stay there and make work. I was actually a local resident at this one because it was in Chattanooga, so I just got their studio space that's not attached to any bedroom. Now this particular residency, it's called Stoveworks. I actually applied to this one 3 times and I got accepted on the 3rd time. That was really, really exciting. I've had a good time. There's like 4 more days in the month, so my time there is almost over, which is sad, but also I think I'm ready to take a break from intensely making art. That being said, I definitely went through some things this month. Exercising creativity to its fullest extent requires a specific mental space. I'm going to say this is probably across the board. There may be some exceptions, some people out there that can be really creative no matter what mental space they're in, but this is definitely true for me. I can draw and paint and make things no matter what mental space I'm in, but the level of creativity and the level of excitement, creative things happening in my work, it's better whenever I'm in a better mental space. I don't exactly know how to define what that mental space is, but I do know what gets in the way of it. And I've been dealing with a couple of those factors this month. This month was my residency, so it was important for me to fight through those things so that I would be able to attain more of a creatively motivated mental space. So the first creative mental block that I've experienced is imposter syndrome, and all that goes into it, such as comparison and the need to prove myself. And then the second creative block that I've been experiencing is a preoccupation on the preciousness of time. I've had a bit of a scarcity mindset when it comes to thinking about time, feeling like I didn't have enough time and never had enough time. Nod to Mary Ellen in her video on scarcity mindset. In this video, I will be unpacking both of those, discussing how they showed up for me, how I worked through them, and still was able to be creative and make work, even though I was kind of fighting those things. Before I dive into those, let me just set the scene a little bit further and talk a bit about the work that I've been making this month. My art practice right now is in transition on subject matter, art style, and the materials I use. So 3 things in transition. I feel like I'm starting from scratch, and that can be a bit of a scary place to be. It can, and it has made me ask the question more often this month, is my art good? Is this art? Is this good art? So it's a scary place, but also an exciting place to be. So take that information, hold that in your head while I move on to discuss the mental creative blocks that I've been experiencing this month. Imposter syndrome. Essentially, it is a feeling where you feel like you're unqualified or incompetent in a particular space. You feel like you're a fraud in whatever space you're in, like you don't really belong there, like I am so unqualified to be here. It definitely comes about, I'd say most often by comparing yourself to others and thinking that others are more qualified than you. I have a history with feeling imposter syndrome with this particular art residency space, Stoveworks. It's a wonderful space. They do a lot of good there for the art community in Chattanooga, good people there, and this is completely on me. But when I first graduated from undergrad, I would go to Stoveworks for the artist talks they had, for other events, and so often, especially with the artist talks, I would just sit there with like this feeling, this uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach, feeling like this is so out of my depth. These artists are so much smarter and more experienced than I am. And let me also just say, like, I just graduated. I was in my early 20s. I'm in my, I guess, still early 20s. I'm 25, so mid 20s. I was feeling all these things and feeling like comparing myself to these artists majorly. And like, I knew they were older than me, and of course they had more experience, but still it just made me feel like I'm an imposter, because I was like, I'm an artist. I should feel like I fit in here. And I didn't. I've worked through those feelings quite a bit. I feel a lot more comfortable in the Stoveworks space, and this month it's become my second home. So I've definitely become really comfortable in that space, although I do still deal with those feelings on some level. So coming into this artist residency, I had little traces of that imposter syndrome, I guess, kind of triggered coming into that space. Being in Stoveworks, which had a history of intimidating me, being in a serious art space for kind of the first time, like ever since I graduated college, being at the beginning of my art career currently. I mean, I've been an artist for my whole life, but I'm somewhat freshly graduated. I'm young. I'm just kind of beginning to find my place in the serious fine art world. So for all intents and purposes, I am at the beginning of my career. I haven't gone to grad school yet. And in the residency, I'm surrounded by other artists at varying points in their careers, most of them older than me and at a further point in their career. Needless to say, all this stuff together, feelings of imposter syndrome, my dear old friend, were all but inevitable. Those feelings were complex because on one side, I had been accepted into this residency, and there was a ton of other people that applied and didn't get in, and I was accepted. That's validating, you know? Then on the other hand, there was now this feeling of needing to prove myself, prove that I deserved being chosen over all those people. I was very in my head at certain points in this residency. Now, this wasn't my whole residency. This wasn't my whole entire experience, but there were moments that were like this, especially at the beginning of the residency. So that's a peek into my imposter syndrome experience. And imposter syndrome actually ties into the other creative block I dealt with, which, as I said at the beginning, in a very wordy way, my preoccupation on the preciousness of time. So, for example, I love notebooks and blank paper. It's everything to me. And I've definitely had notebooks throughout the years that I've been afraid to touch because I couldn't decide on anything that felt worthy enough of being in this beautiful notebook. And so I just let it sit and sit and sit. And you know what happened? The notebooks never got used. They never reached their full potential. And that very fear that I had of messing up in the notebook and wasting it is what enacted the actual waste. I was scared of wasting the notebook by putting something in it that I ended up not liking, and because I was scared of that, I never used the notebook. That is what can happen when you spend too much time worrying about wasting time. The time that I was experiencing in this residency during this month became way too precious in my mind, and I felt paralyzed by that. I felt so strongly how scarce of a resource time was, and that made it more difficult for me to actually do something with that time because I cared too much about using it super wisely and productively. And the imposter syndrome ties into this because I felt like I had to prove myself. I had to prove my worthiness of getting accepted into this residency, and that made the time feel even more precious and even more high pressure. And my time at this residency really was truly limited, so treating it wisely was important, but I also needed to be fine with wasting time, because the passing of time and using time to experiment and play around with things and think, that all informs creativity, that all informs work. Going through those moments where imposter syndrome and time scarcity would collide made it really difficult to start work, because I would simultaneously have lots of ideas, but then I would be questioning if those ideas were good enough to take the time to do. And I would also have trouble starting on any one of them, because the reality is that if I started on one, then I might be not starting on another one that maybe was more worth my time. Basically, my mindset at certain times in this residency was, if I'm going to take the time to make something, it better be worth the time required. And that is very paralyzing. However, I still did make work, and I didn't really get paralyzed. I had a few moments, and I had some moments where I did become overwhelmed, and it was harder to work through that and make work through that. But honestly, I overcame those things this month. So, how did I fight these feelings and the creative paralysis that they threatened me with? One step for me was simply making one thing at a time. This is not new advice. Take one step at a time. Just keep swimming, in the words of a famous fish. Something small is better than nothing at all. Bars. It's easy to get intimidated by big tasks. Initially, what I thought I wanted from this residency, to make lots of good work, to develop my voice and my style in a completely new subject matter, it felt very big and intimidating. But if I just looked at each day as an opportunity to just make one thing, no matter how big or small, no matter how good it was, then that was something manageable that I could do. I also consistently had to work on letting go of the feeling that I needed to fully find my voice in this new work. I instead focused on letting this time spent in the residency being dedicated for exploration and beginning to develop my voice in a new subject matter. And that was a much more attainable goal for me. Goals are good to have, but having a large, undefined goal is not helpful. I also adjusted my goals along the way as I went through the month and figured out how to balance my time. Also this month, I worked on my relationship with time and with my view of it as being a scarce resource. I think part of this is from a capitalist mindset, because it's been ingrained in us, at least those of us who are in this capitalist culture, that time is money, that we should always use that time productively in terms of making money or doing something that will lead to making money. And often time that doesn't do either of those things can be seen by people as being wasted. But sometimes time actually needs to be wasted. And sometimes wasting time is the most productive thing you can do with time. There's so much importance in life that is found in the wasting of time. And it's especially important for cultivating creativity. Those who want to be creative cannot feed that creativity without using their time to be spontaneous, to hang out with people, to converse, to play, to experiment, to think, to observe, to feel, to dream, to listen, to sing, to be unproductive and yet so productive at the same time. Very little time is truly wasted time, because it all feeds you and it all grows you. You can hear the allergies in my voice. Being at the art residency, I put more pressure on myself to be productive, to make physical work, because of course making work is central to being an artist. It's important. It's what being an artist is all about. But I regularly reminded myself that I still needed to allow time for the whole creative process, the silence and the thinking and the experimenting. I'm going to briefly go back to imposter syndrome. It's not easy to combat imposter syndrome. It's not something that has a simple remedy. It doesn't just go away overnight, but it is so worth pushing through it. Little by little, you will start to see a difference. Truly, I've experienced that in my own life. First, remind yourself that at the core of it, it's a mental battle and it doesn't reflect reality. I mean, maybe you are in a space that you don't know as much about. Maybe you are younger. Maybe some of these things that you're thinking about are valid, but they're not things to be ashamed of. They're not things to hide and to make you feel like a fraud. You're supposed to be there. People are at different points of their journeys, and you're going to come across people in every space you're in that are at a further point in their journey, and they have things that they can teach you, and you have perspective that you can bring to that situation. You're supposed to be learning. We're supposed to constantly be learning in life. So feeling like you're a little bit less experienced than everybody else, that's not a bad thing. Something else you can do is talk to others in the space that you're feeling like an imposter in, and you'll actually realize that generally people are a lot more similar to you than you think, and some of them, maybe many of them, either are going through imposter syndrome at the same time or have gone through imposter syndrome in that same space. Remind yourself that you're in that space for a reason. Maybe you got hired or promoted in your job. That wasn't an accident. Maybe you got invited or accepted into a group or a program. You were invited for a reason. You were accepted for a reason. Maybe life just simply led you here to that space, and it felt like the next natural step in your journey. There is a reason that you're there. You're there to learn and you're there to grow. And those things are super valid. Comparison is the thief of joy. You've probably heard that statement before. It's still true. Don't invalidate yourself and your experience. We all have different experiences. We all have different strengths and weaknesses that we bring to the table. And that's a very important and valuable thing. That's what's beautiful about being human, that we're all different and we have these different experiences and we can learn from each other and grow with each other. You have value to bring to the space and to the people that are in that space. So don't be scared away by the thought that you don't belong there. I hope that by sharing my experience that you've been able to glean something of value from this video. If you would like to hear more about this residency, I just posted on my own YouTube channel a vlog of my whole month there. So you can get another look at the art residency, more of a hands-on, what is it actually like kind of look. Go check that out on my channel. And let me remind you that here on Passionfroot, we want this to be a two-way street. So we really want to hear your comments. Maybe you've dealt with imposter syndrome. Maybe you've dealt with an unhealthy relationship with time. Maybe you've dealt with creative paralysis. We want to hear about those experiences. We want to hear if maybe you even have advice that you can share with us and with our community. So comment them below. You can also feel free to DM us privately on social media, or you can reach out to me on my own social media. You can find all of that stuff in the description. Thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so if you want to see more of this, and we look forward to hearing from you. And we will be back with another video next week. Stay tuned for that video. Stay tuned on our socials to see all the stuff we're posting in between. And yeah, until next time, let's grow together. Bye.